Every community has its own look, its own feel, its own style, its own vibe. In marketing, we refer to that as a brand. So I had a question. What is a community brand? Recently, we got with 3 different folks who have their own viewpoint on what it takes to be a community brand. First up is Chris Murphy, local business owner, publisher of Modesto View magazine, and community advocate. And the question we asked him is, what is a community brand, and how does Modesto's rank?
What is it about classic cars for you?
Classic cars it says something about a time and a place. And it also says something about kind of respect of history. You know, it's like whether or not you love a car or not. It's like, you know, I don't actually own a classic car. I love classic cars. I love what they do for the community and what they inspire. And it's just a visceral thing, you know, the chrome, the sound, the paint and everything. You know, it's like, I'm glad that people collect them. I mean, I collect classic guitars, which is a lot easier thing to collect. But I think it says something about the art and history of a community when you recognize that these things are awesome. I was reading the New York Times this morning, and like all of these old cars are now coming really like in vogue, like the old Range Rover Defenders, and people are scouring the world right now for unique and interesting stuff that is older. And I think that whether it's this generation or next generation, there's something inspiring about when someone makes something that's gorgeous or paints something that's beautiful or writes a song that's amazing. Those are the things that stick. And I think people want to go back and connect to that. And I love what it says about our community when we respect that kind of classic car thing, the sound, the chrome, the cars, the culture, the music, the rock and roll. It says a lot about kind of, it takes you to a place. And I think that's where people want to be. Every day you want to have an experience that takes you somewhere, whether it's in your head or a place or a daydream or whatever. And I think that's important to keep those kind of things alive.
The classic car era of our community, which is something that you hold as sort of part of who we are as a brand.
Right.
This is post-war, you know, 1950s.
1940, yeah, the World War ended in 1945. You know, it's.
I'm going to be presumptuous. You weren't even alive yet.
Yep, that's a good vibe. I look that bad now.
So, when we're looking at our community as a brand, and you're a brand guy, you're a marketing guy, you've done this for a living at a high level. What is it about this particular item of who we are, the classic cars, as it relates to cinema and as it relates to George Lucas? Why do you feel, in your perspective, it's so important that we focus on that as a tent pole of our community's brand?
It's real. It's authentic. And that's what people, I believe, crave. You know, in this digital world, we're bouncing from BuzzFeed to whatever thing you swipe right, swipe left. There's no depth in anything. And I think that the more that we live like that, the more we crave those authentic moments. And that's why, you know, whether it's a vacation or a walk in the park, but I think for us, for Modesto, cities all over the world are trying to figure out and market who they are. And they'll invent things that really have no relevance to who they are. And people misconstrue a slogan with a brand, but you have to take what you really are, what's real. You know, and our car culture is real. We had a role in this post-World War where you had gas was rationed, rubber was rationed, steel was rationed. People had nothing at that point because everything, and then the war ends and you have freedom. You have gasoline. You have a highway system where drive-ins are popping up nationwide. These things weren't about cruising. It was about the weary motorist finding this round restaurant to stop for a dinner. So that is the kind of the foundation of cruising and everything. And Modesto had a really important role in that. You know, whether it's the car customization of Gene Winfield in the late 40s, that's where this starts for us. So you go look at, if you're coming from the outside and saying, what about Modesto is real and legit? You'd have to say our classic car culture, the music culture that began with rockabilly in the 30s, and then you look at the ag that we have with the innovations of Ernest Julio Gallo, and now the smart ag that exists. These are the real things about our community. And the fact that we can say, you know, people go all over the place. You know, Field of Dreams is a set they built for a movie. People go from all over the world to go see that Field of Dreams set. And we're the town that inspired one of the top 100 movies of all time. So that's real. And so it's not to say you have to love these things, but it's really a sense of who we are. Because I believe, Mike, that people are craving authenticity. And that's what Modesto brings to the table, is this really authentic credibility of who we were. And I think it's really easy. We've been served up like the slowest softball over home plate. All we have to do is hit it because it's us. And it's up to people to tell a creative story.
Whose role do you think it is to push a community brand? So let's use this example. Let's say as a community, we sort of wholesale agree that our classic car culture and our connection to George Lucas is who we are. Whose role is that? Is it government? Is it the community? Is it a little bit of all of that?
There is a modern concept of what we are and what we could be that is legitimate, but it's not necessarily unique. Mm-hmm. You know, there are night markets, you know, farmers markets, you know, those are great and it's wonderful. We have a great local food culture here. It's not unique. Do we feed the world? Yes, we do. But a lot of cities feed the world, essentially. So those are really good and are vital parts of who we market to. Like our downtown restaurants loaded with great restaurants and bars. They're 100% independent. That's what we market. Because a lot of cities have great locavore dining. So the graffiti thing is unique, is that our streets, the 10th and 11th streets, were the places where George Lucas observed this cruising culture that happened nationwide.
So what is this? Tell me about it.
This is the spot right here. These are the streets, 10th Street, 11th Street, everything that George Lucas grew up kind of checking out when he was a kid. And since the late 40s, 10th Street was where they cruised. So this was the drag right here. This very street right here is where it was Dragon 10. And so you look at, all these different cities have these places that they love, that they're famous for, like Hoboken has the waterfront, these places, and all the great iconic places in New York City or Chicago where they've had these film spots happen, right? You go to Katz's Deli and there's a sign over the top that says, this is the scene where Harry Met Sally did the salad scene. People love that stuff, but the thing is, I think it gives credibility to these are the things that your city is about. And so you look at 10th and 11th Streets, this is where, after World War II, these guys started cruising, and this is where this whole thing evolved. Then they made it a loop from 10th and 11th. So for me, these are really special. This is a special place because we didn't have to make it up. We didn't have to create it. This thing is legitimately the space that created the whole, basically nostalgia was kind of reborn in America thanks to American Graffiti. And those stories that George wrote about happened on these streets. So it's legitimate. Can we talk about cities and their branding and their authenticity? We didn't have to create one. It wasn't that there was just a film made. Well, the film was made about our culture. So that's why it's important. So that's why, we said, you know what, we're going to create the historic cruise route. So I went to the city of Modesto and said, look we have 10th and 11th Streets. They're the stars. We don't have to build anything that's already here. So how about if we create a tourist attraction that has the history of Modesto on 25 kiosks, so you make a loop like the cruisers did, So go down 10th Street, down a G, back up 11th, and come down K. Back then, 10th used to go all the way down here to Burgess Drive-In. But right now we have a mini cruise loop, right? And so you can walk in a span of less than 2 hours. You can learn about the history of Modesto. You can learn about the hot rods, the drag races, the bands, the music, the theaters, and you can really learn a lot about your town in a nice simple deal. That's why I did it. It's like people want to know where they come from. And when you visit, why is this place cool? But our guy took it and made a movie out of it, and we have our own Field of Dreams field in 10th Street right downtown. That's the place. That's where it all happened. These stories happened there, and my job, I think, is to tell those stories and give a compelling reason, because that's where the teamwork comes in. We need government to come in and say, all right, we have a branding strategy. This is who we are. I'm marketing outside companies and CEOs, because CEOs want a place that people want to live. So if you have a cool history and you have a current culture that's vibrant, I think that's where the collision, and that's the mistake we all make here, is it's not an either or question. You can have all of these great things about what makes us awesome today, but at the same time, if you can intersect that with these pillars that make us, it's almost like if you make a 3D Venn diagram, it says classic cars, community, families and all that stuff, and you take American Graffiti, you take all the food, and they intersect the pillars at different places. It's almost like a visual 3D chessboard. And I think that we need to think bigger, that those stories can collide with our modern stories. The government and the various people like the CVBs, the City of Modesto, the Opportunity Stanislaus, all of those folks have to kind of rally around that and say, yeah, this is who we are, because they're all trying to do the same thing to different people. And so I think that it's up to us to create a captivating or an intriguing, legitimate story, and then have the people that have the marketing dollars say, all right, we're going in on that. And when people, 150,000 people, I'm not sure what the exact number, drive by Highway 99, no one knows what's inside this town. We're missing our chance to talk to everybody who doesn't even stop. And if we had a billboard at the end of each town that says, welcome to Modesto, USA, home of George Lucas and American Graffiti, stop in for amazing food, drink, cocktails, and a night at the Gala Center. Wow, even if you don't stop, you went by, hey, did you see Modesto's a home of George Lucas? I didn't know that. Maybe we'll come back next time. And you plant a seed with someone who isn't even looking for a seed. So I was like, wow, that's interesting, because I'm a billboard guy. I love looking at stuff like that. And I love it when I go to a town and say, this is the home of something, or that this is the thing. And like in the South, if they haven't figured out Highway 61. If you ever get a chance to follow the blues trail from Memphis to New Orleans, if Muddy Waters dropped a shoelace, there's a shrine built around it. They appreciate and respect that history that makes them kind of a part of who they are right now. I mean, that's probably a long answer to the question, but I think that's how the brand that we serve up can work in a variety of different ways, and the themes of our city really aren't incongruent.
So let's walk a little bit and just check out some of the different pieces that we have here. What inspired these different pieces? And also on top of that question, what do you think this looked like here 65 years ago?
This was a storefront right here. These were this right here was the entry of Hotel Houston, and there was a Chinese restaurant right here. There was a Fred Hardy's here. So all of these things were just the vital when after the war ended, all the highway traffic. The High 99 was one block over, and these were the hotels for the weary travelers. And there were great restaurants and everything that surrounded it. And then on the nights, Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, this became the place for all the kids to hang out. And even back then, it was more than just kids. You had servicemen that were back from the war, and so a lot more people than just the teenagers cruised back then. So it was really something cool to do. And what was interesting, we talk about George and the movie a lot, but to me, what really interests me, and I think what interested George, is this is a story about the people he made the movie about. So I reached out to George at the time saying, I'm not looking for anything, I don't want any money, I just want your endorsement. I want to continue to tell the story of these people that you basically memorialized in the film. So I wanted to find out who they were. Who was the John Milner? Who was Terry the Toad? Who was the Steve Bolander? I mean, who were those people? And so the Walk of Fame here is basically those people in town that he may or may not have modeled the character in his movies about. Don Wood, a great car racer. The one we just passed, E. Curie AWOL. This is George Lucas's car club. Oddly enough, it wasn't the Chevys and the Fords. They love foreign cars. So George's car was a Fiat.
Oh, wow.
So those guys hung out in a whole separate thing. So the correlation, like in the movie, Kurt drives this Citroën Deux Chevaux. Everyone else had 32 Deuce Coupes and Impalas, but Kurt had the French car. So all of these stories all connected, it was all because of one movie that kind of made it real for us. And so that's why I wanted to have a place that people could go to that says, all right, people come to town and say, what is there for American Graffiti? Well, you can't really go see a lot of the stuff. The old drive-in, most of them are gone. The A&W's still here, but this is a place you can connect. Candy Clark was a character in the movie. She was Debbie. Alan Grant is the character that loosely was Milner. He was the fastest, the racer and everything, and was kind of a mentor. And George raced with Alan, was part of his team. This is the Modesto Throttlers, one of the oldest teams of racing, car clubs, starting back in the late 40s. And so these guys were in the Century Toppers, Gene Winfield. So American Graffiti tell the story about the cruising, but before all of that, Modesto was really the kind of the birthplace of car modifiers. The hammered paint, the pearl, the candy, the super candy apple paint jobs, those were all created here. And those were the cars that got showed off on Friday and Saturday night. So it's basically guys working in their garage, taking their cars out, showing them off here, which led to people hanging out and dating, which led to Kid Lucas checking this thing out and then later making a movie about it. So it's based on legit, based on legit, based on legit.
Right. So how many of these installations are throughout downtown?
There's over 40 of these downtown. We add six new markers a year. We add the Grand Marshal of the annual cruise parade. The North Modesto Kiwanis played a huge role in the rebirth of graffiti here in Modesto by bringing the cruise back down to the downtown, the cruise parade, and then their car show that they've done, and they kind of switched it from a Concours d'Elegance kind of thing to a hot rod car show. So the Kiwanis kind of brought that back. When that was going on is when we decided to let's start telling the history of American graffiti.
Right. And how do you feel that is sort of built up over the years? So you create these installations, you really focus on this. George Lucas comes to town, gives his endorsement of it, and then we have places that are called graffiti dogs here.
It's amazing. I mean, when this happened, that was like one of the greatest days because people recognize the value of what people come to see. People walk into that place and said, I want to see this. I used to cruise. Here's pictures of my car. This is all really personal stuff. We'll get tour buses come in here from like Japan. They'll line up some cars from the Faroes. They'll get up, check out the cruise. They'll have a quick lunch, and they're on their way. So the cruising history of Modesto is something that is worth stopping by. And our goal now is how do we take this and make it so you just don't stop here, but it's an overnight. And that doesn't happen unless you have a real story.
So whose job is it to put up that billboard? Whose job is it to create those art installations? I know you've been working on this tirelessly for 20 plus years now.
We put up our own murals, and we put up our own marketing material. And I kind of a couple of years ago, like just with Modesto View, I just decided, we're going to create a vehicle that, because we can't get these marketing messages consistent, I'm going to create a vehicle where I market around it. And so I created a platform that has a large reach. We've become the largest magazine in Central California now. And I figure we're just going to take this message and keep taking it to the people. And hopefully 1 week and 1 week and 1 week, and we'll just keep on expanding. So I think that there's a lot of those things that can happen. But at the end of the day, if someone has a job to market Modesto, that's their job to say, all right, I'm taking this message, we're going to build a campaign around it. I look at people that I'm really good friends with that are currently championing these things, like Todd Aronson, the new CVB, and then Keith Boggs in the travel and tourism. Those are really where it gets down to, because that's, at the end of the day, they have the money.
So there's a statistic that 85% of communities fail at branding, and the metrics they put on it are obviously tourism. They look at
heads and beds, tax and rollover.
Right. So 85% fail at this, and these are much larger, more sophisticated cities than even perhaps ours. Why do you think they fail?
Because they're not true to who they are. They're trying to leverage something that may or may not exist. I think a lot of cities make mistakes when they try to reinvent themselves. There was a branding episode here a couple of years ago that their branding was family owned and operated, and it's like, what part of that makes sense to anybody? If you dissect that slogan or brand, family, well, which family? Well, if you're not in a family, are you welcome? When you can dissect something like that, it's destined for failure. And I think a lot of cities make similar mistakes, because we'll get a new crew of people who come in and say, you know what, I have a completely new idea for the city. We're going to be the home of basketball weaving or whatever it is, or we're going to be the locavore, whatever. And I think that they're starting for something when they don't really know what they are. And a lot of cities, sadly, it's not really the fault of some of these cities. Some of these bigger cities don't have anything. You think about it, Modesto, the birthplace of rockabilly music. Rockabilly put the beat in rock and roll. It's one of the three pillars of country, blues, and rockabilly made rock and roll. That started in Modesto in 1938. That should be enough for most cities to build an entire heritage over. But we don't have only that. We also have the first and the biggest global winery that started here immediately the day after Prohibition, which is a cool story in itself. Then we have the whole American graffiti car culture. Then we have the Gene Winfield. That we have so many things that we can build on that are interesting, fun messages that you can be 100 years old or 17 or 8. The 8-year-olds that go to the Grease sing-along, they're having a blast. They're not there because they're forced. They're having a great old time. And I think that cities fail when they try to be who they aren't, or cities struggle because they really don't have a compelling history. And I believe Modesto has both. We have a lot of history, compelling history, and then we have a current situation that's really interesting and vibrant right now. So it's up to us to make those two cultures collide.
So I'm going to use a little marketing speak here,
Sure.
something I think you'll totally understand. Marketing 101, let's call it.
Okay.
So
I love that class.
yeah. So one of the first things they teach us is about a SWOT analysis.
Right.
Let's do a quick SWOT analysis about our community. Let's walk through that.
Okay.
What would you say our strengths are?
Strengths, we have amazing history and culture, fantastic volunteerism and in our people. We have communities and neighborhoods that are really vibrant, that work together. And then we have our own set of industry. And I think that last one's really important. We don't want to make this too complicated because Modesto, unlike some of the bedroom communities, we don't live or die with the city. You know, we've got our own cool companies and we need to look at who's being successful here, bring more of them, you know, and then our neighborhoods, their neighborhood feeling like the Loma and the Cana college area, you look at those and we need to take that model and make more neighborhoods feel like they have neighborhoods, you know, and then our history and culture, I mean, we need to leverage that. So I think Modesto has fantastic. If you look at our SWOT, it's like if you came in and you're from the outside world, you didn't know anything about Modesto, you go, holy crap, you've got a lot to work with. We had a guy from Anaheim who's the marketing director he's executive director for the Anaheim Chamber of Commerce. And we're doing this whole SWOT analysis stuff, right? And he just stops, says, "You guys are the home of George Lucas? America, why are we continuing this conversation? He's from Anaheim." And he says, "You have that?" And I kind of went like, "Yep." But I mean, you have to, that leg is only one of the legs of the SWOT. You know, you need to support it with the community. And then, like I said, the volunteerism, more stuff gets done in this town with volunteers and boards, whether it's Salvation Army, Seroptimists, I mean, you name it, you know, these groups, you know, Boys and Girls Clubs. Modesto has an amazing giving spirit. And that is I think that's kind of the secret sauce in a lot of this, because people do get engaged. And the cool thing about Modesto, which I compare a lot, is that for you and I to do what we do in this community, if you try to do it in San Jose, no one cares. You're just one of the 5,000 people that come up with a good idea today. You know, if the city's too small, you don't have the resources or the amenities and strengths of a community to make it live. So I think we're right in the right spot where we're big enough to have the stuff we need, and we're small enough where people at large, like, you know, can make a difference. You know, look at Cana, they've changed the conversation for the college area. The La Loma neighborhood, they've changed the conversation. These are small groups of people just acting with a common voice. So I think dude, I'm all in on ours. We can talk about this all day long, but there's a lot to work with here. It's like, I got 10 big giant toolboxes. Which one are we going to use? The hammer or the screwdriver? You know, it's like.
What do you see as our weaknesses?
Oh, self-doubt. Self-doubt. We have two things in our community, and that's when I started my brand, and I decided what my personal brand and then my magazine's brand was, I'm serving civic pride daily, period. If it doesn't do that, don't bother. I tell my writers, if you're not delivering a positive message, don't do it. So because there's two audiences here, we have a lot of Modesto that never ventures downtown. And I'm accused a lot of being too downtown. And I'm happy to have that label because I believe fundamentally that cities don't live unless there's a healthy downtown.
What are our opportunities?
I think we have so many opportunities, it's ridiculous. It's a question of which ones are the most valid. I think that you can have there are a bunch of really cool cities out there, but you can be the coolest city in the world that has the greatest history. But if you don't have an economy that supports the foundation of making it work for everybody, then we're at risk. And so I think that Modesto has an opportunity, and even Stanislaus County to a greater degree, is that we really do feed the world. The question is, everyone's tastes have changed now. People, you know, and the mechanization has changed it. The days of the cannery workers, those are just gone. We're not going to see that kind of large-scale employment sorting peach pits and peaches. It's all automated now. So how does that evolve? We still have the raw materials. We still have the ag. We still have the technology. We have the water. Modesto, in all the water stories, we're better off than most. So when the state sings the water blues, Modesto sings it less. So we're still better off. So water, wealth, contentment, and health still rings true for water, even now in the water shortage. So how do we take those strengths and leverage it? We should be smart ag. The world of aseptic packaging, all the new soy products, almond milks, and all of these things, there's a huge global opportunity for this. The plant-based proteins, we should be owning this because we have a lot of plant-based around here and there's a lot of smart people. So that's, I believe, we can fundamentally change our ag foundation because you got to work with what you have. You have a 300-mile breadbasket of supply. Now, how do we bring those people together to make smart foods? Because what happens is you're not bringing the line worker in, you're bringing the research scientist in. You know, and there's an opportunity, and so those are game changer jobs. So those are the people that bring people out of the colleges into the schools. Back here, you look what Gallo's done with all their brands, and you look at all the young business school or technical winiculture people that are creating these things. Those are real vibrant jobs, attracting the best people from around the world. That's the model. What Gallo's doing, we need to be doing with aseptic packaging. Every industry we have needs to look at how do we be the source of that food. And I think it's really important. Another thing, it's outside of Modesto, but it's the Crow's Landing Air Base. You know, you look at that out there, and Patterson's already become the logistics hub. So we don't really need another logistics hub, in my opinion. But what we need is research scientists. And what I take that land, and Keith Boggs and I have talked about this, you know, it's important. But I think I would give that land to the University of California and say, I want you to put an alt fuels lab. Because we have, you know, Fiscalini cheese has a methane digester, you know, and we have supply of methane endlessly because of our dairy business. So here you have the raw materials again. So you put an alt fuels research lab here. What kind of jobs are you bringing in? You're bringing the research scientists. You're bringing the grad school students. And so that's what we need to do is how do we get that to happen here? And I believe it's a huge opportunity. And then how does this tie back into American Graffiti or whatever? CEOs or startups want to be in a place where their people want to live. So if you walk down 10th Street and there's 10 great restaurants, 3 of them have a band on the corner, you got a rockabilly thing going on and music in the plaza, you're walking down here going, man, this is cool. I should bring my company down here. And that's the battle that a lot of these big company faces in the healthcare. We have a huge healthcare industry. They come to town and go, wow, my people live in Chicago. They live by Lincoln Park. What are they going to like about Modesto? Well, there's a lot to like, but we have to show them. So that's where this goes hand in hand. And this is why art, culture, history is so important to the modern day economy. Because if you connect that job to an interesting place, so you have we have a great art, mid-century modern thing, that might connect. Or performing arts connects, or rock and roll connects, or classic cars connect. Those are things that we can attach to potential future companies and residents. And so when you work so hard at those different foundations, I believe we have a lot to offer.
So if you were to grade our community's brand, what letter grade would you give it?
Well, currently, I mean, any official brand, I'd give it an F. Because we haven't done anything. I mean, our closest thing we have to a brand is our water, wealth, contentment, health, and I still believe that rings true today. And so, and it's like, you know, each one of those things has a history into its own, and so it's up to us to say, what are those 3 things? You know, health. Well, we're becoming a pretty big healthcare industry. You know, contentment. Wow, people, you know, creating that quality of life. Quality of life has no date to it. You know, wealth, I mean, we have an economy that's independent. So we're good. We're in a better spot there. Water, we're a better spot. So I think those foundations are still there. The question is what's going to make someone decide to visit? And that's where I believe we need to leverage the history of American Graffiti, George Lucas. And here's the magic of being the home of George Lucas. If any town can have a Star Wars festival, I was in Chicago a couple months ago, and that's where the big Star Wars convention, and it was a freak show. There were just 100,000 people in town for Star Wars. We're the home of Star Wars. We can own that legitimately. It's not we're making something up. Our guy, George Lucas, invented Star Wars, and his comic book, creative, Downey High School, set building, you know, MJC, cruise watching, race car driving, person invented Star Wars in our town. If you think about it for a second, you could say the greatest marketing mind of the 20th century was Walt Disney. And what has just recently consumed Disney? Star Wars. A guy from Modesto invented a brand and a thing so big it has basically eaten Disneyland. Who would have ever thought that would have ever happened? We should own that. And being the home of American Graffiti, the home of Star Wars, the home of Rockabilly, these are legitimate things that we can say. So that's why we started the May the 4th celebration. So we went to the city council, got the proclamation. We were the first city, oddly enough, to have a proclamation that celebrated Star Wars Day. We should be drawing people from all over the West Coast, all over the world, to be in George Lucas's home for Star Wars days. Those are just the easy opportunities we have here. And so for branding city, we've got none. The only branding that we're doing is we have Graffiti Summer, which is the biggest thing that happened to us all year long. We have Star Wars Day. We're having these things. So we have these events that are basically becoming the branding, but we haven't taken those events and formalized it. You look at our murals, you look at the work that Aaron Vickery's doing, or Tom Nye, Giant. These are fantastic works of art. That should be on every single thing. And so there are all the tools in the toolbox. It's like we have a paintbrush. They're all ready and they're covered with paint. Just need to paint the picture. And that's really what needs to happen. And so I think that we've done a terrible job. We need to bite the bullet and get it done.
This new generation wants to know where everything comes from. And I think that's the same for a city. Why do I visit? Why do I live here? Why do I like it? It's because there's a really great story to Modesto. You know, from back in the, we were always, Modesto was kind of always ahead of the curve. We had the irrigation first, then we had electricity really early. We had one of the first airports, so people don't realize Modesto was really cutting edge back in the late 1890s, 1910, 1912. Then we had this great Bauhaus, City Hall, the Hall of Records built. So Modesto was really kind of in it, water, wealth, contentment, and health meant something back then. Because Modesto really was, due to the agriculture, it was a fairly well-to-do city. And there was a lot of arts and cars and all that stuff that happened here, still today. So all of those things you can trace back. That's all I like about it. Someone says, does that ring true today? Yes, it does. And there's water, wealth, contentment, health means something today, and it's still valuable. And that says a lot about your community, that what was good for you back in the late 1800s is still basically relevant today.
Whose job is it to say, okay, we have all these tools in the toolbox, now let's go?
I think it's people like me and who want to fight for our belief in what legitimacy is. And I hope that the experience and the credibility that I have in the marketing over it will say and communicate how important this is. Mm-hmm. And then it's up to the CVB to say, all right, well, 30, 40,000 people came to Modesto for Graffiti Summer. Here's all their license plate zip code data. Here's the proof that people from New Zealand, Australia, Japan, and England come to Modesto for American Graffiti. So those are the things. We have to build up with statistics, find out what moves the needle, and we've got to build a cohesive brand message. And I believe, it's simple. We're Modesto USA. That's our brand. That's what we should be. It's all you need to say, nothing more. Modesto USA, and if you want to put something at, a classic American city. And what does that mean? People say we all enjoy the fact that we've got the small town thing, but the big city amenities. Well, that's a little bit of the classic USA. That makes us really kind of that Americana or Modestocana. Classic means a lot of different things to different people. It could mean classic cars. It could mean classic architecture. It could be mid-century modern. It could be that the fact that we feed people and make food. That's pretty darn classic. And so, so Modesto USA, and then we just put it down there. We're the only one that matters. There might be other Modestos in the world. I think there's one in Illinois, there's one in Mexico, but Modesto USA, take the California out of it. It's all we need. So Modesto USA, a classic American city, it says all of those things to all of those people, whether it's art, music, food, drink, culture, commerce, it's right there. It means we're accessible. It means we're friendly. It means we're Mo-Band. Last night in Mo-Band in the park, 4,000 people sat around watching a band playing songs that were written in 1919. Think about that dichotomy. Do we love history? Well, yeah, we go to see a band that was started 100 years ago. Do we all get together and celebrate our great food? Yeah, we are. We're sharing meals out there. Are we cruising around with empty wine glasses, begging for wine? Who has the best wine bottle? You bet we are. That's really kind of a microcosm of what this all means. So it is accessible. And so the one thing I hope to get across, just because we are this home of American graffiti, does not mean we either live in the past or are hanging on to some piece of chrome. It's a who we are that allows us to be something bigger and more interesting.
So creating a community brand takes more than just one person's opinion. It's a kaleidoscope of people coming together with their opinions, their experience, and their thoughts on a community to really create something robust. Creating a community brand is really no different than creating a brand for a company or an organization. So it's nice to be able to get people in a room together to be able to share those thoughts and answer a question: what is a community brand? And the answer is, it's a little bit of everyone and a little bit of everything. I'm Mike Daniel, thanks for watching.